Hello and welcome to my channel, Games with Dick. Last year, I made a top 10 video games of 2020 video and it got a whopping 34 views. So much work for nothing. But that's okay. I plan on changing things up this year. Instead of ranking the top 10 games I played, I'll be ranking all of the games I played in 2021. I played about 30 games this year, so I'll keep the reviews as brief as I can. Also, this video is 100% spoiler free. I recorded only the first hour for most of these games to avoid any spoilers. Okay, no more wasting time, let's get started. In last place, we have Monster Sanctuary. I wouldn't say this is a bad game, I just didn't get into it. Like a lot of JRPGs, to progress the story there's a lot of grinding, and I didn't care for the story at all, so the grinding got old really fast. Alright, moving on to number 28, we have Hob. This game has a lot of puzzles, platforming, and surprisingly a lot of Metroidvania aspects to it. The puzzles are okay, but the rest of the game just falls flat. The platforming is extremely frustrating because of the fixed camera angle, and the character doesn't even control all that great. Good Job takes the 27th spot on my list. Last year my girlfriend and I played Luigi's Mansion and had an absolute blast with it. There's something so satisfying about physics-based puzzle solving. I stumbled across this game and hoped that it could be another fun physics-based puzzle couch game, and it was, but it got old pretty fast. And there's nothing really else to say here about this game. It's not bad, it's just repetitive. At number 26 we have Metroid Zero Mission. Overall, I enjoyed my time with this game, but it helps that the game took about 4 hours to complete. At the end of the day, it's a NES game with some enhanced graphics. Looks like a GBA game, plays like an outdated NES game. Let's move on. Next up, Stardew Valley. I have to quickly point out that I don't think this is a bad game at all. I think it's actually a very good game. I'm just not into the farming sim genre. I can definitely see why people love it though. Stardew Valley is filled with a bunch of chores and tasks that can keep casual gamers busy for hours. Also, the fact that it's made by one person is extremely impressive. If you're into these type of games, definitely play Stardew Valley. 24 goes to Mario Tennis on the Game Boy Color. I don't know if it's the nostalgia glasses taking effect here, but this game is so good. The music is awesome, the controls feel amazing for a Game Boy game, but the story mode is what really shines here. You start off as a nobody, but you level up by completing challenges, training, and defeating opponents. By defeating opponents, you're awarded with more experience and rank up to challenge even tougher opponents. It's surprisingly an amazing adventure game. Next up we have Valheim. And to be honest, I didn't play a whole lot of this game, but based on my short time with Valheim, this game has a lot of promise. It's still in early access, but I'm excited to see where this game goes. The survival crafting genre isn't one of my favorites because of how overwhelming some of these games can be. I feel like recent developers for survival games are having an overambitious pissing contest by adding in random junk that doesn't work or just straight up isn't fun. But Valheim goes back to basics. For an early access game, Valheim is more optimized than most finished survival games because it doesn't add in all the extra nonsense. Number 22 goes to Imposter Factory. It's a cute little point-and-click adventure game made in RPG Maker. This is the third installment in a series developed by Freebird Games, so I won't be doing an in-depth review. I will say that I don't typically play games like this because my attention span sucks and I'd rather be button mashing than clicking and reading, but the storytelling in this series is so good I highly recommend starting it. To the Moon is the first installment and my favorite game in this series. Each game takes about 4 hours to complete, so if you ever feel like casually playing a visual novel, this is the game to play. Metroid Samus Returns comes up next on my list. This game fixes a lot of the issues I've had with previous Metroid games. Samus Returns adds a power-up that reveals hidden blocks in the area. Previous Metroid games are extremely cryptic, so I feel like this was much needed. So huge improvement in terms of exploration, and a nice little improvement in terms of combat by adding a parry move and a 360 aiming radius. My biggest beef with this game is the repetition. There are a whopping 35 mini-bosses in this game, but they're all basically the same fight over and over. But again, a huge improvement from previous Metroid games. Number 20 goes to Tetris Effect. I love Tetris, and this is definitely Tetris. There's a few new additions here, but the dynamic soundtrack is the coolest addition to the Tetris series. But other than that, it's still a Tetris game. There's not much to say here, so let's move on. Next up, we have Back 4 Blood, aka Left 4 Dead 3. And before talking about Back 4 Blood, let's talk about Left 4 Dead 1 and 2. I love these games so much. Some of my greatest memories come from playing this game with my closest friends. But is that the only reason why I like these games so much? Like, Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 are actually pretty basic games. All you have to do is get from point A to point B. You choose your weapon, kill a bunch of zombies, and that's it. Left 4 Dead is a great example of a game that perfects simplicity. Though the game might be simple, the character models, the facial animation, the zombie animations, the physics, gore physics, level design, and just overall creativity is perfect. Back 4 Blood takes things to a whole new level, and I'm not sure it's for the best. A card system has been introduced. You can upgrade your weapon by finding or purchasing parts, and the playable characters have their own unique perks. So do all these additions make the game better? In my opinion, no. It makes Back 4 Blood a more ambitious game, but the level of creativity and attention to detail is lacking when comparing to Left 4 Dead. Now, do all the new additions in Back 4 Blood make the game more fun? It's hard to say. I play this game to keep in touch with my friends, and I have a lot of fun with it. But it doesn't feel like the same kind of fun that I had with Left 4 Dead 1 and 2. Still a fun game though. Next up, Mario Party Superstars. This is the Mario Party game that Switch owners deserved back in 2018. Super Mario Party was a pretty lousy game in my opinion, but whatever. It's Mario Party, the game doesn't have to be good, you just have to have good company. Mario Party Superstars is actually a great party game. The number of boards have been increased. Each map has its own gimmick that makes all boards unique. The boards are bigger, stars are back to 20 coins, and the mini games are fantastic. The future of Mario Party was looking pretty rough for some time there, but I think we're back on track with this one. Moving on to number 17 is Shadow of the Colossus PS4 Remake. The original Shadow of the Colossus was one of the few games I owned for the PS2, and at the time, it was probably my favorite game. But it's been years since I've played Shadow of the Colossus. As soon as I got my hands on a PS5, I picked up the PS4 version so I could replay this absolute masterpiece again for the first time in so long. And oh my god, it's the exact same game with better graphics. It's still a fantastic game and the graphics are a huge improvement, but it feels like there were no changes to the already dated gameplay. But if you haven't played this classic game before, it's still totally worth playing, especially with the updated graphics. I was just expecting a little more with the remake. Devil May Cry is ridiculous. I've never gotten into this series because of how stupid these games look. But for whatever reason, people love DMC, so I figured I'd give DMC 5 a shot. Yikes. I stand corrected, this game is pretty stupid. However, I was 100% wrong about the button mashing combat. This game is badass, and now I understand why people love this. Just look at all these moves and combos. The combination of the movesets and combat make this game feel like a modern take on the classic beat 'em up genre. If you're looking to play a game with an amazing combat system, you should definitely give Devil May Cry 5 a shot. Just be ready for some cheesy one-liners and a story that doesn't take itself too seriously. The next spot goes to Pikmin 3. Once again, Nintendo takes a concept that is usually complex and overwhelming and simplifies it in the best way possible. Pikmin is Nintendo's idea of a real-time strategy game, which is a genre I don't typically enjoy. Pikmin 3 gives the player control of the main character. Here you can move around freely and be more hands-on with your units, unlike most real-time strategy games where you're just directing units in an overworld. Pikmin 3 isn't all about growing an army and taking down enemies either. There's a lot of puzzle solving and creative boss fights that you won't see in most RTSs. My only complaint is that this game is way too short, especially while playing the co-op mode, which I highly recommend. 14 goes to the meanest game I've ever played, Bloodborne. This is my first experience with the From Software game, and these games have a reputation for being insanely difficult. I've had years to mentally prepare myself for a Souls game, and I was still unprepared for the amount of pain that this game caused me. But for whatever reason, I could not put this game down. I used to think that people only played these games as a rite of passage or bragging rights or something, which might be true for a lot of gamers, but Bloodborne is actually an incredible game. First off, the setting is perfect and might be my favorite part of Bloodborne. This game is already terrifying enough in terms of gameplay. One bad move can result in an unforgiving death, so you fear for your character's life. From Software Games increases the fear with these amazing but insanely creepy enemies in a Gothic Victorian era setting. I knew Bloodborne was going to be a frustrating game, but I wasn't expected to be more terrified than anything. In terms of gameplay, yes, it's hard, but it's a fair challenge. Like, I died a bunch, but I don't remember a single death being from a glitch or a bug or anything like that. The combat system is optimized extremely well, which I hear this is the case for most From Software games. So yeah, the game throws a lot of unfair situations at the player, but once you master the combat, you feel like a badass. But if the player dies, it's probably just because you messed up. Another thing to mention is how great the level design is. Dying in Bloodborne is frustrating because you lose all of your souls, but the checkpoints are equally as unforgiving. This game rewards players by taking a risk and exploring all areas of the map. Sometimes venturing off on a random path can lead to a permanent shortcut as a form of progression. I love that. So yeah, get good and play Bloodborne, scrub. And the next game on my list is yet another extremely unforgiving game, Returnal. Like Bloodborne, the combat makes this difficult game worth playing. Returnal has one of, if not, the best third-person shooting mechanics of all time. It definitely borrows a lot of elements from Doom, where the player doesn't sit behind cover for an entire fight. Instead, the game encourages the player to move around the battle arenas to dodge projectiles, execute the annoying weaker opponents, grapple hook to higher ground for a quick advantage, and platforming around in search of health and other upgrades. It's fast, but so satisfying. And I haven't even talked about the boss fights yet because of spoilers, but holy cow, dude, the boss fights are so good. We're going to go ahead and skip number 12 for now and jump into 11. Number 11 goes to Mass Effect Legendary Edition. So I've already played Mass Effect 1 through 3 before the Legendary Edition came out, but I haven't gone back and replayed them since completing Mass Effect 3 when it was first released in 2012. I was one of those butthurt, angry fans who was disappointed by the ending of the series, and this? I don't even want to talk about this piece of shit. So yeah, BioWare has been dead to me for a while now. But the Mass Effect trilogy has a special place in my heart. So I was excited to pick up the Legendary Edition and revisit the series. And I gotta say, these games actually hold up. Well, one of them doesn't. Mass Effect 1 has always been a struggle for me. The combat is not great. The level design is boring, NPCs look like idiots, graphics don't really hold up, the Mako is still a disaster. I just do not care for this game. But Mass Effect 2 and 3 are both incredible games. I've always loved Mass Effect 2, so nothing has changed there, but I was actually very happy with the conclusion of the series this time around. Again, I'm a super fan, but if you haven't played this series yet, the Legendary Collection is the definitive way to play. Just know that you'll have to suffer a little bit through Mass Effect 1, but it's worth it. I promise it gets way better. Number 10 on my list goes to the 2021 Game of the Year, It Takes Two. It Takes Two was directed by this guy.
Okay, fuck the Oscars, you know? Fuck the Oscars!
And he's also directed Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, and A Way Out. Now, I haven't played his previous two games, but you can tell that Faris is perfecting his craft of couch co-op gaming. It Takes Two is a game about a married couple planning on getting a divorce. Their daughter hears about the divorce, cries on some dolls that resemble her parents, and then some magic happens. The parents wake up as dolls, and this is where the fun begins. This annoying book of love challenges the couple to work together and hopefully rekindle their relationship. This is such a great backstory and motive for a couch co-op game. The players, like the characters, are working together to complete challenges. I love that. At first, the challenges are just basic platforming, but the gameplay is constantly introducing new ideas that keep the game fresh, and it just works so well. This is such a great, charming game. If you're looking for a game to play with a friend or significant other, this is a no-brainer. At number 9, we have Horizon Zero Dawn. This game reminds me a lot of the Mass Effect trilogy. The world building in Horizon, like in Mass Effect, is fantastic. In Horizon, you play as Aloy in a post-apocalyptic world where humans can't rely on technology, so they have to move to a primal way of life. And what comes to mind when you think of primal? Dinosaurs, dude, that's so dope. But the same issues I have with Mass Effect exist here too. The lore is amazing and well thought out, but the dialogue and the characters just come off really cheesy. The gameplay, however, is incredible. At first, I thought it was going to be another boring stealth game because of the tutorial. Also, why do people love stealth games so much? It just makes no sense to me. Sneaking around and pressing one button to kill someone does not sound like fun to me, but anyway, yes, the combat starts off as stealth, but it's only the planning phase. You can track the enemy's walk patterns, and you can scan the enemies to see what kind of weak spots they have. So once you've spent some time being sneaky and coming up with the game plan, it's time to execute and hope that all that planning paid off. I just feel like the combat has a really good balance of stealth and the usual balls to the wall gameplay that I typically enjoy. You can't stealth kill every enemy you see, but at the same time, it would be really stupid to go into battle arrows blazing without having any sort of game plan. So coming up with your own strategy for certain fights can be really fun. But like I mentioned earlier, although I love this game, it's nowhere near perfect. There's a new game coming out in the Horizon series, and I'm very excited to play it. Next up on my list, we have Mario 3D World with Bowser's Fury. I had pretty low expectations going into Mario 3D World because all the other Mario 3D games had something new to introduce to the series. Mario 64 introduced 3D platforming. Mario Sunshine introduced the FLUDD mechanic. Mario Galaxy went psycho mode and introduced the spherical playing field. And Mario Odyssey introduced Cappy, which expanded on the 3D puzzle platforming. Mario 3D World is just kind of another 3D Mario game without any gimmicks, but at the end of the day, it's still a 3D Mario game, and these games are masterpieces. Mario still feels amazing to control. You also have the option to pick other characters that control differently. Co-op here is actually fun, unlike other 3D Mario games.
Nice.
And the amount of content in this game is also a really nice surprise. Speaking of nice surprises, Bowser's Fury is the reason why I rank this game so high on my list. Bowser's Fury is Nintendo's little experiment for an open world Mario game, and if this is what the future of Mario games look like, then I already know that the next 3D Mario game is going to be a masterpiece. Number 7 goes to a game that I should have played years ago, The Last of Us. This game came out in 2013 and received an insane amount of praise from both gamers and game critics. I haven't had a Sony console since the PS2, so here I am in 2021 playing this game for the first time. But yes, this game is a masterpiece in terms of traditional storytelling. Not the most entertaining game in terms of gameplay. I've already expressed how I feel about slow stealth gameplay, and check this out. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that I'm only recording the first hour of gameplay to avoid spoilers. Out of the first hour, these highlighted clips are areas where you're actually fighting enemies. Now, to be fair, it's only the first hour of the game, and I know the game picks up eventually, but at the end of the day, the gameplay isn't the star of the show here. The storytelling, and more specifically the chemistry between the two main characters, is perfect. Joel and Ellie are so convincing and feel so real. The animation and performances make these characters actually feel human instead of the usual robotic characters that we're used to seeing in video games. If you haven't played this game yet, don't be an idiot and wait as long as I did. At number 6, we have Metroid Dread. Finally, a Metroid game that I'm actually a huge fan of. Metroid games have always felt too cryptic and claustrophobic for me to enjoy when comparing them to other Metroidvanias. But it just works so well here in Metroid Dread. Samus's movements are so fluid, and she's an absolute blast to control through these tight maps, especially during the enemy segments. The Pulse Radar feature is back from Samus Returns, so the game doesn't feel cryptic at all. The combination of free 360 shooting and fluid platforming blends so well together here, and just like every other Metroid game, the upgrades are constantly changing the gunplay and exploration. This is by far my favorite Metroid game so far. I do want to mention the price though, because I was able to 100% complete this game in just 13 hours. So the price to playtime ratio is not great, but dude, this game is so good. You're not paying for playtime here, you're paying for quality. Oh, also, Samus is a total badass in this game too. And in 5th place, we have another Metroidvania, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Last year I put Ori and the Blind Forest at my number 6 spot. My biggest complaint with the first game was how weak the combat system is, and Ori and the Will of the Wisp completely changes the combat system and makes this game so much better. There are now a handful of different weapons you can choose from, and it seems like the developers borrowed a lot of inspiration from Hollow Knight by adding all of these charms that affect the combat as well. There's just so much room for creativity. And the platforming and exploration were already good enough in the first game, but much better here. You know you're off to a good start when the game throws in a grappling hook, and I really enjoyed whatever this upgrade was. A few other great things to mention are the graphics. I mean, come on, this game looks beautiful. The music is freaking incredible as well. The moods of the characters and scenes are expressed so well through the music and animation, and I also love the introduction of side quests. The side quests made me feel like I had a reason to explore versus exploring because it's a Metroidvania and that's what I have to do. Before I move on, it's worth pointing out that I think Metroid Dread is objectively the better game here, but I just enjoy the openness of Ori more. I'd rather sling around and glide in this open map versus running around in tight corridors in Metroid. They're both incredible games. Dread is the better one, but I enjoyed my time with Ori more. Moving on to number 4, Nier Automata. Nier Automata tells the most interesting story of any game I've ever played. I praise The Last of Us for its storytelling, but its storytelling is very traditional. Not that there's anything wrong with traditional storytelling, but video games give storytellers the opportunity to create an interactive story. Games like Skyrim, Fallout, Horizon, Mass Effect offer dialogue options that the player must decide for their character. Certain responses can affect how other characters treat you or even the storyline of the game. Mass Effect will even throw morality decisions at the player. Do you, the player, want to pick a bad thing or good thing for your character? But there's still a disconnect here, right? Neither one of these choices really affects me, the player, just the character I'm playing as. The storytelling in Nier Automata is very meta or self-aware. So the decisions in this game were meant to affect you, the player, instead of the character. It's really hard to say anything more about this game without spoiling it, so I'll stop talking about the story now. I went into Nier Automata blind, and I'm glad that I did. But what I can talk about is the gameplay, the music, and just overall creativity this game offers. First off, the combat is nuts. It's so fast and satisfying. It's exactly what I expected from a game developed by Platinum Games. The combat never gets boring either. Most of this game is spent in a third-person action RPG camera, but then sometimes it turns into a top-down action game, or a shoot-'em-up, or even a platformer. This is just such a great way to change up the gameplay. And the music, dude, it's so good. The music on its own is great, but Nier Automata goes above and beyond and uses a dynamic soundtrack. That means that each song has a handful of different variations that blend together perfectly depending on the actions of the character. Just listen for yourself. The gameplay alone is a good enough reason to play this game, but the story is insanely creative. I wish I could talk about it more, but again, you need to go into this masterpiece blind. The first game in the top 3 is Monster Hunter Rise. This is probably the most addicting game I've ever played. I can't explain it. In 1 week of owning this game, it went from the bottom to the top row of my most played Switch games. In Monster Hunter, you hunt monsters, loot their corpse, and craft stuff so that you can face stronger monsters and do the same thing over and over again. So yes, there's definitely a grind, but the grind is so much fun. At the time of making this video, I have around 230 hours into this game, and I'm still not bored with it. There's so much to learn and do in this game, it's insane. Even 230 hours in, I'm still learning monster attack patterns, weaknesses, armor sets, and the big one is weapons. There are 14 weapon classes to choose from, and they're all unique from the last. So if you get bored of using the same weapon over and over, try out a new one. It keeps the game fresh. Another thing that has me coming back to Monster Hunter is how easy it is to pick up and play for 30 minutes, but equally easy to play for 8 straight hours. God of War takes the number 2 spot on my list. This game is near perfect in my opinion. The gameplay is hardcore. I haven't played any previous God of War games, but they've always looked like some sort of button mashing Diablo-like dungeon crawler nightmare. This God of War is nothing like that. There are light attacks, heavy attacks, range attacks, blocking, parrying. There's a list of moves and combos to learn here. The enemies are a fair challenge, and attacks have to be performed carefully versus just pressing the same button over and over. And just a little cherry on top of how amazing this combat system is, Kratos looks like a badass performing all of these sweet combos. The executions are brutal. The sound design is so punchy, if that even makes sense. Everything about the combat system is so fluid. Even the storytelling is amazing here. The character designs, the performances, graphics, and animations really sell the cutscenes in God of War. The dialogue is well written, so the amazing performances don't come off cheesy either. And it's not like the story is super overwhelming and in your face either. Cutscenes can be fairly long, but they never interrupt the flow of the gameplay. God of War just has it all, and I recommend it to any gamer. Red Dead Redemption 2 tells the greatest linear story in the video game medium. There's so much attention to detail here that it's definitely the most immersed I've ever felt playing a video game. The cast of characters in the Van der Linde gang feels so alive, and I'm not even talking about the graphics and the character animations. I'm talking about their personalities. Each member has their own motive to be in the gang. Loyalty, relationships, greed, revenge, being an outcast to society, the violence, the thrill. Each character is so unique in their own way. And this is a super long game too, so there's plenty of character development in that time. It's just stupid how much thought they put into these characters. They actually feel human. But yes, even on a technical level, these characters feel just as real. People talk about how immersive the world of Skyrim is because of the amount of freedom, but for me, that immersion is always ruined as soon as I talk to a lifeless NPC. In Red Dead Redemption 2, it's not just the main cast of characters, but even the NPCs feel human. Dude, I'm telling you, it's the attention to even the minor details that make this game feel so immersive. There's a whole series of YouTube videos by Real Pixels where they explain how historically accurate Red Dead Redemption 2 is. In terms of technology, social issues, music, weapons, the clothing are all accurate to what was present in 1899. Rockstar created this 60-hour-long game with 20 hours of cutscenes, 500,000 lines of dialogue, and 300,000 animations between them. They hired 500 actors to record motion capture for 6 years, and 700 more actors to record dialogue. I mean, holy shit, man. The amount of love that went into this game is nuts. But all of this comes at a cost, however, because the gameplay is not the greatest. The gunplay is repetitive, the cover system is a frustrating mess, and most of the game is spent following a yellow line and spamming the X button. But I'm telling you that everything else about this game is so good where none of this bothered me. Usually in games, I'm skipping all of the cutscenes so I can get into the actual game. Red Dead 2 was the complete opposite for me. Let me get through this crap so I can continue on with the story. And I haven't even talked about the story yet because of spoilers, but it's so good, dude. I haven't even scratched the surface of what this game has to offer. Just play it if you haven't, please. Oh yes, and I did skip number 12 on this list because that goes to Red Dead Redemption 1. I was afraid that it might spoil my number 1 pick. I played through Red Dead 2 first and then immediately picked up Red Dead 1. I had no idea that Red Dead 2 was a prequel to Red Dead 1, so that worked out nicely. But Red Dead 1 definitely feels more like a classic Rockstar game. The pacing is much faster than Red Dead 2, and the characters are just goofy as hell. A lot of Red Dead 1 doesn't take itself serious at all, and that's kind of its charm. And that concludes my list. I already have a list of games I want to play this year, so you'll probably see another one of these videos next year. Thanks for watching.